This is the Hot Nerd Network, and I'm Hot Nerd Cheryl. We welcome you to the Hot Nerd Network, and I have my other hot nerds on the line. I have River and Misha, Hot Nerd River and Hot Nerd Misha, and we're excited to be here today to talk about The Bear. We want to do a recap of The Bear season one and season two. It was a great show. I really enjoyed it, and I just thought it would be fun for us to all come together and just talk about our thoughts on each seasons. So, with that, I'm just going to get started with a few questions. So, River and Misha, we're going to talk about our favorite moments of season one and season two. I'll start off to kind of give you guys where my moments were. I One of my favorite moments in season one was it's going into a couple of seasons in. I think the season was called Dogs, and I connected. It was about the hot dogs for the party with Jimmy's Uncle Jimmy's. I guess it
Mhm.
was his son. I can't remember his son or daughter. And then they put the Xanax
Yep.
inside the inside the inside the punch, and everyone was knocked out with a nap, and I just
Mhm.
thought that was pretty hilarious. So that's one of my favorite moments. So River, why don't you share a favorite moment of yours?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite moments from season one is a pretty subtle one, but I think it's like tied to a theme that continues beyond season one into the second season. But it's Sydney giving Carmi this like massive binder of ideas that she has, and
Oh, I
all
love
of these different questions that Carmi has. She's like, "Oh, that's actually on page this, and that's on this page." And I just loved her ambition. I feel like a lot of young black people probably see a lot of themselves in her. Um, and so that
Mhm.
moment I feel like really set the tone for like the vision she has for herself and the vision she has for that restaurant. So I thought that was like a really, really touching and like tender telling moment about Sydney's character. So that's a
Oh
standout moment
yeah.
for me.
love
Yeah.
that.
What
I
about you,
have to
Misha?
say, you
Hmm.
stole my answer.
Oh,
The hot dog moment lives rent free in my head, but if I had to pick a backup, I would say when Sydney, this is toward the later part of season one where
mhm.
everything is getting really heated in the kitchen. And I remember Richie and Sydney are like in each other's faces, and she's holding
Yeah.
the knife, and he's like, "What are you gonna do? Stab me?" And she's like,
Oh
"I might."
yes.
And then later she's coming around the corner and they say corner and she accidentally does stab him in the butt.
I know.
And I feel like it's just a funny moment because she said she would, but it's also, I think, kind of symbolic because throughout the season, he's sometimes a jerk and just like a pain in the butt for everyone.
That's a great analogy. He was a pain in the butt, so he
Yeah.
probably deserved to be you poked in the butt a little bit. But no, you made me remember a couple of scenes. River, when you talk about that scene when she gives him the little notebook, and she's like, "Yeah, that's on page 27 about the window or something." I kind of remembered that, but I also thought it was really beautiful when Marcus had taken the notebook, the Noma notebook off of the floor, and he
Mm,
had made pictures of all of the desserts that Carmi had made and put them up on his wall. It was such a
yeah,
homage,
Mhm.
a homage to Carmi's work, and I just thought that was beautiful because he admired him so much, which made it so sad.
Exactly.
And the not sad, but it made it bad when Carmi just really totally just messed up his donut and that
yeah,
scene at the end. And I'm glad they were able to kind of rekindle the moment, but still it was he definitely admires him. So thank you for reminding me of that. I totally forgot about that moment. So
yeah, and
I had other moments that I had written down that were my favorites. um uh the one of them was when Sydney gave the dish to the food critic. She didn't know it was the
Ooh,
food critic though.
yes.
I was
I feel
like,
like that was
okay,
the
that
best
was
scene.
karma. She's like, I really didn't know he was a food critic, but I don't think she knew. Do you all think she knew it was a food critic? Do you think she
Oh
really knew?
no.
I didn't think she knew, but it
no,
was kind of funny that that would happen, and that he thought her dish wasn't quite ready, but it was ready enough for the food critic.
yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
But I
and
think that's
then a
like
lot of
the win
the
she
oh,
deserved
sorry,
to
go
have.
ahead, River.
No, I was just gonna say I think that's a win she deserved to have because I feel like the whole you know, dynamic between Carmi and Sydney in the first season is that he's like overly harsh and overly hard on her because he's replicating this like, world of culinary arts that he came up in where you have to be really hard on your sous chef. And he knows like Sydney really
Mhm.
wants to be great and she looks up to him. So he's kind of hazing her in a way. But then like this
Yeah, he
moment we
was.
get to see her
Mhm.
like put her dish out unknowingly to this critic and it raves, so I was
Yes,
happy,
yes,
I was like, go for it, and I'm very much rooting for Sydney and I'm very
yes,
I loved that moment for her.
yes.
I have
I'm
to
rooting
say,
for her
going off
too,
of
and
that,
you all know why. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Misha.
no, I was just gonna say, going off what River said, like I love that moment for Sydney, but for team chemistry, I was just like, oof, this is a hit. Because
Yeah,
even Richie was just like, oh no, like we all know she did that on purpose. Like, come on, guys.
yeah,
Because he
Yeah,
always wants to kind of make her the bad guy in season one.
yeah. I think
I think
that's
it was. Sorry.
no,
Go
go
ahead,
ahead.
River. I'm sorry. You go
No,
ahead.
no, no, no.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's kind of interesting, I because all of them really tried to make her feel bad. Tina, Ibrahim, I think it is, and
Mhm.
Marcus was the only one who was nice. I think they all really tried to really rag on her because they were scared and they were intimidated, and so it just,
Definitely.
and you can imagine with Richie and his background and where he was coming from in his skill set on how to deal with people. I think it was so intimidating to not only he's already intimidated by Carmi.
Right.
Now he's got this other chef,
Yep.
plus she's a woman. And then, and now he has to deal with that too. So I think he overcompensated with even being mean to her. So no, I agree. You were gonna say something, River.
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say, I think what you just brought up around like the dynamic between Richie and Sydney and the terminology of team is really good because the whole first season really feels like making sense of how a team functions and like growing pains as a team because there
Mhm.
is this one just new restaurant that they're building under new leadership with Carmi. So like you kind of have like a new coach, a new quarterback, new star player. Then Carmi's
Mhm.
recruiting these new people. Sydney comes in. So a lot of it is this like how do we work and as individuals all together. So there isn't trust. There really isn't trust amongst one another. So I get that there was that potential concern around like she was just trying to, I don't know, get some attention for herself. But it felt like their anger at her lost the broader win that it was for the restaurant, which is like,
Mhm.
this is helping put you guys on the map. And like, this is helping initiate the rebrand that you're kind of trying to step into, which is exciting. I think that yeah. So hopefully, they see that Sydney is, I think, also acting out of best interest for the restaurant.
Oh
Definitely.
yeah, and I think ultimately they figure that out in the end. I love the line in the end when she walks in to get her last check, and Richie says, "Come on, grab a can of or grab a can
Oh
opener,
yeah.
Sydney." And I thought, wow, look how they've come full circle, and
Yeah.
now they're all realizing we have a big win here.
Oh, yeah.
Um, you know, so the other thing that I was sitting here trying to remember. I had here gaining insight on Carmi and Jeffrey. Did you all? Why Tina always called Carmi Jeffrey, but I have not
Yes.
been able to figure out why. I mean, do you? Is his name Jeffrey, or did that come from someplace? Do you all know?
Please, I've been dying to dive into this. So I feel like that to me is such like an iconic piece because I think it just like shows a big development in Tina's character because I feel like from her perspective, it's kind of like playing it as like, oh, it's part of like the language barrier because she thinks he's saying, or she hears him saying chef. And she's like, oh, I'm going to pretend like I don't understand this because he's saying, like, I call everyone chef out of respect. And so she's like,
Hmm.
I hear you say this, but I'm going to say it wrong and make you think, like, oh, it's a language barrier. But that's really showing disrespect. And like, I don't like the
Yeah.
changes. I don't like the way you're doing everything. And then there's a moment I remember where I think Tina messes up her prep and Sydney already had the second one ready. And I think that was like one of the very first moments we hear Tina say, oh, thank you, chef. And I feel like
Yes.
it just shows her character growth. And I think it was supposed to be comical, but it's also just like a serious moment of showing how much Tina has like distaste for everything that's happening and all the changes.
Yeah, I definitely
Yeah.
think it's like it was out of an act of defiance initially, and it
Yeah.
was like a I'm not invested in this, I'm not gonna whatever I'm gonna say whatever it sounds like, they're just gonna get
Mhm.
whatever from me. But then she buys into it because she's like, these people are supporting me and these people are helping me do my job better. And
Mhm.
I think, yeah, so I completely agree with you, Misha. Like I think it was this defiance turn to really leaning in and becoming part of like that culture of the group.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I love how she in the end of that scene, Misha, where she realizes that Sydney helped her, and then she still was a bit defeated because she was like, I don't know if my potatoes are going to meet the mark. And then um Sydney says, good chef, they're good. And she's like, oh, she was totally shocked. And then
Mhm.
and her saying, thanks, chef. So I agree with you. It was definitely a turning point. And it also turned her into really trying to get Richie to turn around because she was like, look, you're messing things up
Definitely.
because this is good. The restaurant is clean because it was quite a mess. I don't think they really knew how to clean it the way Carmi did. Um,
Mhm.
but I just thought that was such a clear transition. But I also you just reminded me, well, I'm reminded myself of cleaning the restaurant when they got the C in the
Yes.
inspection, and Carmi was
Mm.
blaming Richie for those cigarettes, not
Yes.
realizing that he was the one who left
Thank
the
you.
cigarettes on the stove, and how he realizes that in the end, like, oh man, I'm the one who caused that. So it's about accountability for him too, because I think sometimes he had a problem with being accountable for his, and that was a rolling theme for me, his accountability and coming to terms. Sometimes I think he took it to an extreme, especially in season 2, but his accountability part was a common theme as we went through.
Mhm.
So
I do want to
so
say
let's
really
talk
quick.
about, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, I'm
No, I
sorry,
just wanted to
Misha, go
say
ahead.
really quick on the accountability part. I think it plays an interesting like connection to just like his inner psyche, because I feel like the accountability and the way he manages it stems from his professional training, because he was in such like that negative environment. And I feel like the writers make it a point to always show us clips of his former like management. I don't know the chef term, so I don't want to say it wrong, but whoever was above him, and just like how he always beat him down and almost like verbally abused him. I feel like that is something that he internalized and unfortunately carried over into his leadership.
Yes, it's true. Even though he didn't want, you can tell he didn't want that to carry over, but
Mhm.
it's a natural carryover because when you only go, you do what you learn. And
Mhm.
Exactly.
so I just think he had just learned that that was the only way he could really think through his skill set. But he quickly, not too quickly, but I think he learns in season 2 how that can be so damaging and hurtful.
Yeah.
But I think he also figures it out in season 1. I'm sorry, River, go ahead.
No, no, no. I was just also thinking about how there is this like toxic professional environment that Carmi comes from, but there's also this like not great home life that he comes from as well.
Yes.
That I think, you know,
Yes.
leads to conversations around like his brother and his health, but also like his mom as we learn more about his relationship with her. Um,
Mhm.
and so it feels like Carmi's coming from these two contexts where he really has developed like unhealthy, you know, standards around communication and accountability and working with other people and
Mhm.
trusting other people. Um, and so in building this new restaurant, he's trying to like return home, so return away, so come away from that like toxic professional environment, but he has to confront his toxic home environment as he's stepping away from
Yes.
it.
Yes.
And so I think season one is such like a really interesting like picture of that journey. And like I think one of you just mentioned like the flashbacks to like his professional life, like really seeing him oscillate between the two, because it is so visceral. Like I think, interacting with two worlds that are that different, like I'm sure you felt like that many times in your life. The closest I think I felt like that was like college and going home. Like when I would
Mhm.
go to college versus like coming back home, I was like, whoa,
Mhm.
like this is a lot of change.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think I just that just came to mind as we were sort of reflecting on like Carmi and navigating those two worlds.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And in season one, and I know we have a lot to talk about in season two as well, but in season one, I thought it was interesting the whole dynamic of him understanding or dealing with his guilt of not being there for his
Yes.
brother.
Oh my gosh.
Although it really wasn't his responsibility to help his brother through that, but I know that he felt guilty that he wasn't there. I know that I thought it was just so interesting. I had a question here about the Easter eggs, and I'm just going to jump to that because it does kind of play into what we're saying. But the different Easter eggs of the times that they talked about those tomato sauce cans. They kind of across the along the journey of the episodes, they always played on it, and I didn't really connect why until the end, of course, when
Mhm.
we found out that all of the money that Uncle Jimmy had given Michael were in those cans.
Yeah.
And I often wonder, I don't know, he threw one of those cans in the
Yes.
trash because I always, in the very beginning, I was saying, oh, they lost the can. They
I
lost the
said that
can of
too.
money. But I just thought that that was really kind of interesting about also that theme through the first season.
No,
So,
I agree.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to jump into the highlights of the second season, and um,
Oh,
I think well going back to the first season, there was that theme of the relationship that he had. I think they call it the head chef. Misha, you got the sous chef, and then you have
Oh
the head
yes.
chef.
Mhm.
So I think it was his head chef who was abusing him, but I did not realize until I finished watching the second season again that that head chef came to the restaurant. Did you all recognize that? I did
Yes.
not recognize that the first
at
time
the
I
end.
watched it.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, at the end he was there. And it's like, I think that's what caused him to really go into that spiral, and it was just so ironic that he ended up in the freezer that way. And I
Yeah.
hate to take us straight to the end, but I
Yeah.
just was curious what you all's thoughts were on that and that whole last scene. So let's start from the end and then we can work our way back.
Absolutely. Um,
Yeah.
I guess I can go ahead.
Yeah.
No,
Mhm.
I definitely noticed that, and I think it was kind of a tipping point because there was just so much buildup, and he had his distractions with Claire and trying to figure out how to balance just having a normal life and finding purpose outside of the restaurant, and then seeing his old head chef and everything with his mom. I feel that just boiled over, and I want to touch on the freezer because I don't know if you all remember, but when I rewatched it, I remember them like trying to get everything together. And because Carmi was so distracted with like his moments with Claire, they were fixing things and they were supposed to have fixed the freezer. He was actually supposed to do it, I believe. And
Yes.
he was so
Mhm.
distracted that it ended up being his downfall in the end. And so
Yes.
I just thought that was a crazy thing of like Claire had distracted him, or he let Claire be a distraction from
Yeah.
fixing the freezer. And that same freezer was what kind of brought his relationship with Claire to shambles.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is,
Go ahead, Reverend. Mhm.
yeah, I think that's a really good example of foreshadowing because I didn't even connect that until you just said that, Misha. So that's a really
Mhm.
good like co- connection to how like his neglect and his lack of accountability in the moment with the freezer led to sort of him being detached from everyone at the end. um I thought the second season was spectacular, like so good.
Oh
I'm
my
so excited to
gosh.
talk about it. I thought the ending was like so harrowing in so many ways because it really just reinforced that Carmi is this like tortured artist, like
Yes.
he
Mhm.
has this preconceived notion that he has to have an awful relationship with work and the people around him, and he succumbs to pressure and anxiety,
Mhm.
and he is so great and so gifted. But it just felt like the classic tortured artist, like he ruined his relationship with Claire. He has an awful mentor that he feels a lot of pressure with. He has a great team around him that he feels like he's not supporting well enough, even though there was that really tender moment where like Tina goes to the freezer and is like, hey, we're killing it out here, which I
Yeah.
was like, okay, I hope that makes him chill, but I think it just reinforces anxiety.
Mhm.
So I think that's going to be something to look forward to in the third season. Like, how does he really become like this healthy leader now that they kind of had a solid opening? I think that is like the takeaway I came with from like the last episode. But and then his conversation with Richie also was so hard. Like
Yes.
Amazing, amazing acting, stellar writing, so intimate. And that's how you know they love each other because they went there. They went so low. And I think Carmi was just obviously triggered, when Richie called him like Donna, he was like, "You're acting like your mom," essentially.
Yeah.
Like, um, it was a really, really harrowing end. But, I think it revealed to us how much work Carmi has to do, for himself, on himself. Um, and the second season was different in that we got a little bit of a glimpse of the whole team rather than just focusing on Carmi because we got an
Mhm.
episode for each
Mhm.
person. So I am
Mhm.
wondering, like, is the third season going to go back to a little bit more of a focus on Carmi and his like narrative? Are we going to stay focused on the team? Who knows? So yeah, I think the ending left me really sad, but really excited about the third
Mhm.
season because we have such an amazing character to follow in Carmi, and obviously the people around him too. But the ending was about him. I for me, like I think that last
Yes,
episode
I
was about
agree.
him and his
Mhm.
relationship to the
Mhm.
the restaurant.
Mhm.
So I'm really excited to see how that plays out.
Yeah. I totally agree with you, and I just it was just so interesting to see, like you said, how they helped develop each of the characters and show how they
Mhm.
grew. Each and every one of them grew. But I also love the care that Sydney and Carmi took to
Mm,
give them all those
incredible.
experiences. I
Yeah,
thought it was so beautiful that they sent Marcus to
I love that.
Copenhagen.
incredible.
I thought it was so beautiful that they sent Tina and Ibrahim to this to cooking school. My one of my favorite episodes was Forks, when Richie went to that
Yeah,
Oh,
restaurant. And that's actually a real famous head chef, the woman who spoke to him in the
mhm.
end. She's I love what's the show, Master Chef, and she was on there, or Master Chef, once. And I she's an incredible restaurateur, right? And she incredible chef. I just thought it was so poignant for them to just kind of show us the other side of the kitchen, how
Yes.
important it was, to the harmony of how everything is ran. Is not technically it's the chefs, but it's also that leader who is controlling everything. And
Mhm.
I love how Richie in the end ended up doing that. I just thought it was so poetic. Actually brought a little tear to my eye, because I was like, wow, Richie, you have come full circle. And he really was really important in really making Carmi realize you really messed up. What did you say to her? Why are you always sabotaging yourself? Because that's how I
yeah,
feel Carmi is. He's always sabotaging himself.
Definitely.
And it's just, but I also feel like Uncle Jimmy had a part in that, if you remember. Because do you all remember that part when Uncle Jimmy was talking to him, when it was closer to the
Oh,
end, where he was saying, you don't you to be great, you don't have time to be anything else.
yeah.
You can only just be great, and this is the only thing you should be focusing on. And
Agree.
that's so untrue, and
it's
I
so
felt like he
unhealthy.
took that from him.
But the
Yeah,
thing
what are
is,
your thoughts?
I
Yeah.
think
Mhm.
from the uncle's perspective, he's biased because remember, he wants his money. Like they're indebted to him. So I get what he was saying, and I know Carmi's being pulled in all different directions, but that hurt me because Carmi's hearing this, and we all
Yes.
know like he's in a fragile place. So to hear
Mhm.
that, he just is gonna take everything in, and he's not even thinking like, okay, well, he doesn't necessarily have my best interest at heart because we're indebted to him like a couple 100,000,
Yeah.
honestly, more than that.
Yeah, yeah. But still, I think, but that shows Carmi's non-ability to be able to filter through what, we all have to filter through what we can take from advice and what we don't take.
Yeah.
You look like you want to share something, River. You go
Well, I
ahead.
just I just think what you shared illustrated like the really beautiful thing that season 2 did, which is that for these supporting characters, we saw them grow, but for Carmi, he ends up in sort of the same place, and there's still this like question mark on how is he developing. Um, because Richie had this really tender moment at the beginning of the second season, I think, which was like, what's my purpose? Like, you're the chef, like all these people here play a role. What am I doing? And then yeah, I cried the last episode a ton, a ton.
Yes.
I was just like,
Yeah.
it just is there. I'm there, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that was definitely one of the moments because he is this like unsuspecting guy, who like kind of is like rough and rugged and like shows so much tenderness. Like I think he has a hilarious moment with his daughter where he was like, I'm sorry, I was just tired of Taylor Swift. Like, I love you, like, I don't know if you remember that because he's like, she's getting out of the car, and he was like, I don't want you to think I'm mad at you. I just am tired of hearing Taylor Swift.
Mhm.
And I just love seeing those sides of him because he is this whole person, and we get to see that for these supporting characters, for these like for people outside of Carmi. So yeah,
Mhm.
Carmi, definitely a lot to be seen, I hope, with him in terms of his wellness and his betterment, because yeah, back to the toxicity of his family. His uncle is not feeding him, these great is not giving him the best advice around like his health. And then his mom, isn't really able to show up for him in a way that is helping him heal either. Like the
No.
last episode, I think that was another moment where she was like, I don't deserve to see them have this. When in reality, that would probably be such a healing moment for everybody. Um,
Mhm.
and it's not that like to make it seem like it'd be perfect, but like there was probably a lot to be gained from the family having that moment together. So it's just tough. There were a lot of tough dynamics that I think we still there were still a lot of yeah, there were a lot of tough dynamics still to be explored that the last episode left unanswered. So I love that there's like so much to look forward to. Yeah, I
Yeah.
really.
Yeah, you reminded me of something with his mom coming. I feel like that was a missed opportunity from Pete. Pete
Mm,
should have told her. I would have said, "No, I am not going to tell you it's okay. You need to get yourself into this restaurant because I am not going to allow you to hurt your daughter anymore." And
yeah,
so if you don't come in, then I don't you are hurting your daughter. The one thing that I can say about my own relationship is that my with my husband is that he is like my wall. No one is going to hurt me, right? So I just felt like that was Pete's insecurity, that he didn't step up for Sugar. He didn't. He should have told her, I will not say it's okay. And that really
yeah.
disappointed. I kept saying, tell her it's not okay, tell her it is not okay, she
I
needs to walk into the restaurant.
Yeah.
I think he was a little shocked finding out though that the mom didn't know about Sugar's pregnancy, and I feel
Yeah.
like I think that because I think I really empathize with him in that moment because he's like, oh wow, like does Sugar not want her mom to be a part of these
Yeah.
things? Because and I think that maybe is why he might have not advocated more for
Yeah.
the mom to come in, because I think he was thinking, of course you know that she's pregnant, like, but she let him know that she didn't.
Yeah,
That
that's
was
true.
it
Hmm.
was a it's a tough place to be in, but I do think you're right in that. I really would have wanted him to be the one to bring her in, and I think
Yeah.
that would have been a really beautiful role to play. But I think he got new information that he was having a hard time like digesting. And I
Yeah.
don't even know what that's like, like
No, you're right. I and
um
I don't I also don't know, was he hurt that she didn't tell you make
right,
me think now, was he hurt that she didn't
right,
tell her mom that she was having his child, right?
right.
Maybe he internalized that himself, so he was really focused on his
Mm,
own pain. And
that's
I do think he has pain. I feel like Pete is very insecure in his own way, that he's very nervous and he just wants to be a part of this family. And regardless of how messed up these young kids are, they are all very smart. Even Michael, you could just tell they were all geniuses in their own, minds, and but yet their talent didn't they could not get out of their own way. They couldn't get out of their own way due to all of these family dynamics. And I think Pete, when I look at him, or I kind of look at his character, I think he's trying to figure out, how do I fit in with all these powerful people around me? And I think they make him feel small. So I don't know. That's just kind of my take on Pete, but I do agree with you. He probably was so taken aback. I didn't look at it from that perspective. So you make a good point.
just touching on it really quick. When you say they make Pete look small, they definitely do. Like you
They
have to
do.
think,
Yeah.
even back to season one, like they Carmi, like they explicitly make it a point. Maybe not Carmi did a little bit, but Richie definitely did of making it a point. Like, you're not really one of us. Like, you don't get a say. Like, we only come here when we need something. And I remember even Sugar had said at one point, she was like, no, 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 don't help them. Like, they only come when they want something. Like, you don't even ask, am I okay? Like, I lost a brother too. And I feel like just they downplay him so much and exclude him so much that, of course, like he wants to do anything he can to just feel accepted. But I do say think he does a good job throughout the episodes of like just kind of eating those punches. And I think
Yeah.
I'm kind of waiting for it to boil over and for him to just really vocalize how much he wants to be included, and just I'm waiting for that moment.
I think
No,
that's a
I
beautiful thing.
agree. Yeah.
And I think
Mhm.
that's a beautiful thing about, like, when you have a brother or sister who gets married, there's now this person from outside the family who can come in and kind of has a different context. And I think Pete is definitely that. We don't know much about his background, but
Yeah.
I think what you just shared is what I'm kind of hopeful for as well, in that, like, can he be someone who encourages like healthiness for this family,
Mhm.
and like
Yes.
intimacy for this family. And I think what you were just advocating for with like Pete and the mom bringing her in, like, that is like a really prime example of like how someone can, help a family change and grow. But yeah, Pete definitely, ate a lot of punches for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he
Which I'm like,
did. He did.
is that just like this, the status of being an in-law and like, having a tough family to impress, which I think
Yeah.
comes with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely a really interesting character too. I think that's the beautiful thing about season 2. Like, these characters are so rich. I was reflecting on the second season, and I don't think it's like a show where obviously the actors do a phenomenal job and the writing's
Mhm.
great, but it's not like overly dramatic and overly done. I think it's the content that is just so good. Like, I think like the story, the characters, I'm like, this is so compelling. Because even down to us having this conversation about Pete, I'm like, because there's so much context that we're given that we can like create a story and create ideas and have wants for him, even though he's such a small part of the story in
Mhm.
in retrospect. So yeah, I think the season 2 really exemplified like the strength of, beautiful characters, beautiful, all of it coming together. It's not just about one thing that carries the show. It's like all of it for me. Which is kind of a blanket statement. I don't know where to go from there, but yeah, I really
No,
enjoyed the second season.
no, I did too. I agree with you. It was so powerful, and that's going to take us into the episode called Fishes, which was a powerhouse episode.
Mhm.
First of all, this show. I mean, Carmi is the young man who also played in Shameless, so he's pretty well known, and then Sydney is a newer actor for me, but I looked at that episode again, and I was like, wow, there was a whole lot of power hitters in there. You have Jodie Foster, you had the
Mhm.
gentleman from Everybody Knows Sal. I can't remember all their names, but there were all of the. You had Sarah Paulson.
Yeah.
There were all of these heavy hitter, big time actors who came to this TV show's episode, and was the acting so powerful.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that episode in itself, I felt like won them the Emmy, because it was the longest episode out of the entire series, and
Mhm.
it was so much packed in there. And it really gave us a really true picture of the turmoil that Michael was having. And I think that was at the moment where I feel like that was really, I think, the last time that he saw his brother alive. I think it was the way they kind of played the time period out. But wow, what are you all's thoughts on that episode? It was so moving for me. I definitely cried at that episode too, because I felt so bad. You really kind of saw the transition. That episode really was the transition in how everything played out for each one of those characters in that family. That is.
Yeah, I mean, I think family gatherings just are always like
Mhm.
obviously there's family drama, and I think like this gave me a whole new perspective on how like bad some things can get and how big things can blow up. And like you said, it gives you context to like the state that Michael was in, because Carmi, and this comes up in the arguments, like Carmi's not there all the time, so Carmi's
No.
like, trauma currently is more so informed by like his professional life that he is invested in, so he's a
Mhm.
little bit detached from the family. And so I
Mhm.
think we see, as we follow Carmi navigating, and as we follow Carmi's perspective, we see from an outsider's perspective like what it is, what the family's like on a day to day. And for it to blow up the way it did, I think it was really hard to watch. It was really hard to watch. It was incredible writing, and it was stacked. Yeah, I think it was like a ton of really big names there. But you know, seeing their other relatives join in, um, yeah, I think it just further provided context to their family dynamics, and um, I couldn't help but want to like get them all out of there. You know,
Yes.
I
Yes.
just felt like they all needed to not be in that space.
Yes.
Yeah,
Especially sugar. I felt like that was a great way. One we I think that's where we learned why they called her sugar.
Yeah.
yeah,
And then I just think it was a great opening eye of seeing how her relationship with her mother was so toxic, which explains in season 2, at the end, at that last episode, how she how Carmi was worried about his sister. He's like, okay, it's okay for mom to come, but are
right,
you okay? I want you to be okay.
Yeah.
right,
I thought that was an interesting conversation that they had before the restaurant opened up. But yeah, it was just such a telling that particular episode was a turning point for me. And I felt so bad for Michael, but I also felt bad for Carmi because I don't think that all three siblings, it was just a real tell of how they adapt to each other, and it was just sad. It was sad just to see siblings not be able, but their mother and their father didn't teach them good problem solving skills. They just didn't. And I think that's really important. I think you learn your problem solving skills from your parents, and everybody teaches them differently, or they don't teach them at all.
For sure.
So that was sad. I didn't know if you had anything else to add, Misha, for that
No,
one.
I was just gonna say, like, you all have covered a lot of things I would have touched on, but I do think, like, we talked about the actors being amazing, and they have been throughout all the seasons, especially this episode. But I think the writing is what really like touched me. Because I remember when the first time I watched this episode, I got about halfway through, and I had to pause, and then I came back to it and I rewatched from the beginning because it was so much to digest, and they really made sure that when they wrote this episode that they went back to season one and like they pulled out certain things like, oh, we need to make sure to explain like why they call her sugar. We need to make sure we depict all these things that we touched on or alluded to. And I felt like
Hmm.
that episode really gave me a lot of answers, and it really gave me the deeper connection that I was yearning for these characters. So I'm like, okay, when Carmi acts this way, I can understand like, okay, their mom might have had a big impact on that and not just me assume what it was like. It really gave us a window into just their experience growing up.
Yeah. And it told me that, they kind of played in season 1 that, okay, Michael has this drug addiction to painkillers, which gives me the thought that he was in some sort of accident, and maybe something happened to him that caused him. And that's something I think that they may discuss more in the
right,
future. Like, how did he get addicted to the painkillers, and how that all came about? But I think addiction was in their family before they even got to that. I think that they're playing on that addiction on the painkillers, but their mother is addicted to something. I don't know if it's addicted to drama, or it's addicted to her own insecurities and depression, or whatever it is. She's addicted to something that won't let her get past to be the mother to her kids that they deserve, and that she deserves, for her to have the relationship with her kids. She doesn't think she deserves that for whatever reason. So there's so much more to kind of jump into her own dynamic that I
Yes.
hope they get more into, because I just love Jodie Foster. So I hope they get more into that in season 3. But
Yes.
we will see. Yeah,
I
we
do
definitely will see.
think that that is kind of one of the longer running themes. I wouldn't say necessarily so much addiction, but mental illness and just mental awareness,
Yes.
because
Yes,
they
you're
play
right.
on it
Mental
so
illness.
much. And I think there's anxiety, there's depression, addiction, and I would even say, like, I don't know if you all felt this, but like, I kind of get a somewhat OCD vibe from Carmi of like how he stores like his jeans in the oven and just like like I understand like with a chef, like you have a certain structure, but the way he runs things kind of gave me an OCD vibe.
Yeah, I think you have to be OCD to be a chef. It's very
Right.
Yeah.
it's kind of like something that comes with the job because you just you can see that in his cleaning. I was thinking about that when he's like, you have to pay attention to detail. Marcus is like, "Why am I doing this with a toothbrush?"
That's
Because
true.
it's about the detail. I'm like, I don't
Mhm.
know what details he getting with the toothbrush on top of the stove.
Mhm.
I can understand it in the corners, but it was really uh uh oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, it was really I just was reminded of something. It was really just telling just how he was doing something on the phone, not the phone, the floor when he was cleaning the floor and he was stuck on that one little spot.
Oh, I
Just kind of
remember.
was another example of his OCD. So you're absolutely right. Yeah, I was reminded just now that I said Jodie Foster was the mom, but that's not, it's Jamie Lee Curtis.
Oh, right.
But I
Yeah.
don't know
Mhm.
if you all know, Jodie Foster and Jamie Lee Curtis are actually best friends. I didn't know
Oh,
that
okay.
Love
until
that.
recently. So I think I'm getting their names crossed. Plus,
Okay.
Jodie was just in another great series that I hope we talk about in the future that I just still stuck in my head. So that's where that came from.
Yeah.
um,
Yes. I
but
was gonna
yeah,
say,
that OCD was a big part. But yeah, I'm sorry, River, you're going to share
no,
something.
yeah, and just on that
Hmm.
point in terms of like,
Hmm.
mental health as a theme, I think Sydney has like a line. I don't know if it's the first or second season that's like, yeah, to be a chef and not lose your mind is impossible or something. Like she just talks about how it's like
Mhm.
a crazy industry. And then on the flip side of that, like in the last episode, we catch one of the guys like smoking crack or something in the
Oh
alleyway,
my
which
gosh.
is like,
Yes.
it's kind
Josh.
of it's kind of like shocking, but like that's a reality in the restaurant
True.
industry. Like,
That is
substance
true.
use
I
and
remember that.
substance use dependency is a very real, consequence of how demanding and I guess just the nature of those jobs. So it is interesting to think, just beyond the general trauma that Carmi and Richie and people have to get over in their life, what is it about the industry of restaurants that really doesn't cultivate, healthy practices and dynamics? And I don't know if that can be tied to broader conversations of capitalism and things like that, but
Mhm.
um it does make you wonder how, this character that we really don't know much about, like this new guy that we catch smoking crack, but we know that he
Mhm.
smokes crack, and that's like a pretty extreme form of like drug use, so it makes you wonder, what is he going through and what's his life like,
Yes.
that we don't know. But it reaffirms that mental health is a real present, thing for all of the
Mhm.
individuals who show up in the show. And I'm glad that they're honest about it. I'm glad that it's
Yes.
not a show that, tries to trivialize it or tries to like make it super intellectual. I think it's just very
Mhm.
real.
Mhm.
Yes,
I did
it was
want
very real, and you're absolutely right about the drug addiction in restaurant in in chefs, because they've played on that in several movies, but I just didn't think about that until you said it. Though that's just, they
Mhm.
were bringing every angle of what really happens, the truth. I think what they're showing us is the true, um how restaurants really run and all the problems that are happening in the background. It's very interesting. I wanted to jump into, though, I wanted to go to the theme of what I found is, if you notice, like all of these different people who were chefs outside, they would talk about how I was in competition or I realized I wasn't as good as this other chef. And it's always Carmi.
Mhm.
Like Carmi is the best chef that they're talking about, like the young man in Copenhagen, where he's telling Marcus, I decided that I'm never going to be as good as him. So
Oh
I
wow,
just
yeah.
decided to learn from him. And there was another one, I can't remember the other scene, but somebody else speaks to how good he was. And it's just interesting how incredibly talented he is, as you said, River. And I don't think he even recognizes how incredibly talented he is. I think he has his own insecurities about what he can't and he can do. So that was just really telling to me. But I didn't know if you all had any more thoughts on that.
I think that definitely goes back to what River initially said about the stereotypical troubled artist. Like, you're immensely talented, but you don't see it. Someone might have belittled you once and you never let it go. And so I think that they're playing very heavily on that. And surprisingly, I feel like it is a cliche narrative, but the way that it's presented in The Bear, it doesn't feel cliche to me. Like
Yeah.
I don't know what they're doing, but it the way they're presenting it is just so different to me, and I love it.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think
it's
it's
the writing. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry. Hmm.
no, yeah, I think exactly it. It's a story, I think, because like we just get so much like we like this the fact that it's like spurred by his brother's suicide. Like, I think
Mhm.
like there's just so many interesting things about what is affecting Carmi's psyche in the present state that makes it such a rich story. Like you said, so there's so much novelty to it. Um, like it doesn't feel like it's been done before. And I think for me, I don't watch a lot of cooking shows. So if you don't watch cooking shows, cooking really does seem like a distant world to you. So I really
Yeah.
don't. I don't have chef
Hmm.
friends. I don't. Other than cooking for myself and family, I don't really think
Hmm.
about it that artistically. Um, but this is another thing I think the show does. Like when they just like cut to shots of food and they're playing music, it's so artful, and you get to see that it is an artist. It is a
Hmm.
craft rather, and that these
Hmm.
are artists. So yeah, I think like Carmi and his recognition of himself as an artist and the value that he thinks he provides is like a true tension for him, and it really just ladders up to him being like the quintessential tortured artist, that we've seen across painters, singers, musicians, etc. Like he is in the
Yes.
lineage of that, and
Hmm.
it makes him kind of fun to root for, I think, because
Hmm.
you want him to see his own greatness, and
Yeah.
he has a lot of love around him, which I think is
Yes, he
really
does.
interesting too. Like he's
Yeah.
not alone in the way that I think sadness tends to be represented. Like he has community
Yeah.
around him, which I think also makes this
Hmm.
a really novel portrayal of like mental health, because there's like a lot of people present and trying to show up for him. So yeah, I know a little
Hmm.
off topic there, but yeah, that's I
No.
think Carmi's just like a very interesting character.
Definitely.
Yes, I agree. I wanted to talk a little bit about how they stood up the restaurant. I didn't think about all the details in standing up a restaurant. I found it so interesting when Carmi came in and said, when they were doing the plates, and he was like, "You hear this plate, and you don't hear it." It's like I didn't really think about how when you hit the fork against the plate, it's every element of the whole experience of eating, right? Of taking in this meal, the smell of
Yeah,
it, all of the different tools you use to eat it. But I also love the reality that they had to end up buying those cheaper plates where they did make the sound, and they showed that in when Sydney made Sugar the omelet. Did you all realize that when she
I
cut
actually
into
didn't.
the plate, it made that clanking? This
yeah.
fork kind of clanked against it, and I was like, "That's why they didn't want those plates." Right? But it was just so I just thought it was all the details. I'm a big detail person. So I just thought the details of every segment, how Carmi was really he was stuck on that table. The table wasn't level right. I thought the table
Mhm.
was fine. But this whole scene with him and Sydney trying to tighten up this table that they both could relate. Yeah, okay, there's something wrong with this table. Me, I would have thought it was perfectly fine, but their attention to detail and when they were standing up that restaurant, I found was interesting. Did you all see anything else that you thought was interesting about that?
I think in general, yes, because like one of the themes I feel like I've been appreciating more, not just about this show, but as I get older, is how to do things well, you kind of have to be a nerd about them. Like
Yes.
you really have to
Mhm.
be like into it. You have to be engaged. Like, so going back to Sydney with that massive binder of ideas, Carmi
Yeah.
with his meticulousness, Marcus
Hmm.
putting up the pictures of like the different sources of inspiration. Like, there
Hmm.
are all these moments where you get to see like, wow, these people really are into what they do. Like despite,
Yeah.
the how whatever's going on in their life and how challenging their day-to-day is, like they are really into it, like from like a rigorous, like almost academic perspective.
Yeah.
So there's just like the through line of like kind of like nerdiness about what you do, that I was noticing and appreciating about the show, um, because I think that's how you do things well. And then a restaurant is also a business at the end of the day too. So thinking about like the art and science of it, like there is a craft and element of like, making sure the food tastes good, looks good, but then there's also like it makes sense. And so I think the presence of money throughout both seasons constantly reminds you that there is a balancing act that they are navigating in this endeavor of being artistic and being informed and being really thoughtful about the, food they cook, but also they have this debt hanging over them. They have money to make, they have people to pay. Because I feel like Sydney's dad asked this, like, oh, what is your business agreement with Carmi? Like, how are y'all, like, splitting? And that's a parent
Mhm.
question. Like, your parents want
Yes.
to know, like,
When you gonna
this
get your
thing.
part?
Exactly, exactly. So,
Mm.
not necessarily just like meticulous moment, what when they were raising the, the restaurant, but I just think throughout the seasons, you kind of see these like real forms of diligence and real forms of like nerdiness, come up from all the characters.
No, I
Yeah.
agree. Just to reinforce your statement about nerdiness, you reminded me in season one when Sydney had done like her research. She comes up to Carmi and is like, "Oh, I did extra credit. Like, oh, this is a
Yeah,
class.
that's
Like, I
right.
want my extra points." And she's presenting him like, "Oh, if we do X, Y, and Z hours and this for dinner, like, there's enough money to like give me a salary, and then like
And
everybody
be
else." But it's just the way she said extra credit. I'm like, no, like you really have to put in time, like outside of work.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I thought it was interesting with I loved how with Marcus and going back to his detail. I just so enjoy Marcus. I just love him so much. He's like, I look at him like a son. I was
He's a
like, I just
sweetheart.
love you, Marcus, because I just loved his joy. He had such joy. And I loved how he recognized, he's like, at McDonald's, I didn't get to show my talent. And here you're allowing me to kind of delve into something that I can just, I literally love making these desserts. And one of my favorite episodes was when they started it off with the donuts, when he was at the donut shop and they were making all the donuts, and then he came and he became obsessed with making these donuts. And then in the end there was that honey bun was one of their final desserts that they had. I think they called it the bear. I think the honey bun was called the bear. Um
Mhm.
and then the homage that he paid to Michael with one of his desserts being named Michael. But I just love Marcus. And I so what are you all's thoughts in Marcus and Sydney? I thought it was kind of interesting. Marcus wanted to ask her out in the end, and I think she just didn't know how to deal with that. But what are your thoughts on that? What do you think that was going to happen in season 3 with Marcus and Sydney?
I think
I'll
whenever
just let
oh, go. Oh, what were you about to say?
no, I'll just say I'm gonna let you go ahead because
Oh,
you look like
okay.
you were ready.
Oh, I was gonna say, whenever a coworker like comes on to you, I think it's just a little like off, not off putting, but it like throws you off because it's
Yes.
like, I don't know you in that context, you know? So like like
Mhm.
I don't think so I don't fault Sydney for not being open to it, because I think it is just generally
Yeah.
like, oh whoa, like what's going on here? Like we literally work together.
Mhm.
Um and then
Mhm.
I think with a restaurant, because it's a smaller team, like it is like intimate. So like, because even Sydney and Carmi have like moments of intimacy where I'm like, do I want to root for them? But I'm like, no, I
Mhm.
don't, because I want them to have like
No.
a really healthy
Mhm.
professional relationship.
Yes.
And I think
Mhm.
it's too tight knit, it's too early stage to
Yeah.
like risk it. And I feel like Sydney's ambition is going to supersede like maybe her like romantic interest here, because she wants the restaurant, she wants the Michelin star. And I think if they have a messy relationship or whatever, or things just get mixy, I think she knows that that might not really lend to her getting the restaurant where she wants it to be. And I agree with that. So I am like, I love Marcus and I think he's a sweetheart, but I'm like, oh, someone not who you work with, Marcus, please.
So I'm
Yeah,
on the I was just say I'm on
go
the
ahead.
contrasting end because even in season one, like I was picking up little things, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm rooting for them. I
I
know
know I'm rooting for Marcus and Sydney
it's
too.
so messy, and I know it could go wrong in so many ways. But since season one, I was like, "Oh, you saw how he touched that? Oh, you saw how he touched
Yeah,
that?" I was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
"I'm
And
rooting
he was
for
trying
them."
to help her. Yeah.
Yes, and I know like it can go wrong in so many ways. A messy split will tear apart the team, all of that. But I don't know. I'm soft at heart, so I'm rooting for it.
Me too. And I believe, I root for the love, right? And I really think that they can make it work. And I see what you're saying, River, in regards to Carmi and Sydney's kind of touching moments. But I don't think Carmi and Sydney, I look at that more like a brother sister sort of thing,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that he really appreciates her. I think he loves her like a sister.
right,
And I think she looks so up to him. I didn't take it as kind of an intimate sort of thing, like boyfriend girlfriend thing.
right.
But that's not to say that they can't turn that, but I hope that they don't turn that way. I
No, I
really
don't
think
want
they
them
should
to. Yeah.
focus on I want them to focus on Marcus and Sydney. I want them to win. I
We'll
just
see.
thought
We'll
that was so
see.
cute. Yeah, we'll see what happens in season 3.
I will say, while we're still talking on Marcus, I have to say, and I don't know if anyone else feels like this. I know we dive deeper into all the characters in season two, but to me, season two is the Marcus show. We had
Yeah.
so much with his mom. We haven't talked about that yet,
Yes,
but I
yes,
feel
and I
like,
think she passes away. I remember those phone
yeah, I feel
messages,
like
but
that's
yes, go
implied.
ahead. Mhm.
But with everything with his mom, the kind of peak with Sydney, him going to Copenhagen, just like deeper diving into pastries for him, like I was so invested in Marcus. Like I loved everyone else and like Tina getting to go to culinary school. But for me, I was like, they could have made the whole season Marcus and I would have been perfectly happy.
I agree. I loved I loved them all though. But bringing back to Tina, how Tina's passion. I mean, she just turned it all the way around, and she really embraced that whole cooking show. I mean, that cooking culinary school. And I loved how Carmi gave her his knife. I thought that was so beautiful.
Yeah,
He said, "I never asked for the knife back." And she's like, "I didn't give you your knife back." That was touching. You're right, River. I cried the whole episode.
Yeah.
yeah,
The whole last episode, I cried really hard the first time. The second time, it was hard for me to watch it. It literally, it took me. I was forced to watch it because I knew we were going to be doing this, and I said, "I have
yeah,
to watch it. I have to watch it."
Yeah.
But it was so hard. I didn't want to go through that emotion again. But it was beautifully written. But that was another touching moment for me. So you're right. I think it was the Marcus show, but I think there were snippets of the other people's show too.
yeah.
Mhm.
Marcus has just such a beautiful story and like
Oh
is just a great character. Like I think yeah, when he's on the bench in Copenhagen and he's like talking to his mom and he's like, I'm gonna send the nurse like the picture of this thing I meant. I was like, oh, like pause. I need to just like pause and like I can't, it was
So
great.
sweet.
Um, and then we see him like really go through like, training as well, like connecting his experience with Tina, like with the guy, I forget the guy's name that he trains with in Copenhagen, but like he's like, try again, try again, try again, try again to Marcus as he does all these really meticulous detail things. Um, and I love that. I love that we see these characters like get that like, professional development because to connect it to Tina, who's like a little bit older, a woman of color, like when people don't have opportunity, I think that's why you have a chip on your shoulder about the success of other people. But we
Mhm.
now see her get this opportunity and see all these characters get opportunity and they shed like this like sense of harshness or discontent with the team and really lean in. And I think her story exemplifies that. I'm not going to project too much into her story because we don't know, but assuming what we can know about like access to like high quality education, things like that for older people, people of certain backgrounds, like she might have not had every opportunity Carmi had.
yes,
You know,
yes.
um, so it's
Mhm.
really such a like redemptive, fulfilling moment to see her get like this culinary institute opportunity and love it and thrive. And then, I think Sydney's like, hey, do you want to try to be sous chef or something like that? Like, we really see Tina get these moments to step into like the leader she clearly wants to be because clearly she loves it. So
Absolutely.
I really, yeah, I think it's great to see those opportunities be, given to the team across the board.
Yes, I
Mhm.
agree. I want to talk a little bit about Ibrahim and how
Yes, please.
he chose not to really take advantage. It's so interesting because as much as Tina, she leaned in, he couldn't. He was afraid to lean in. I think he was afraid to be vulnerable, which
Mhm.
was just so interesting because it showed every dynamic of every culture. It really did, and it was
Yes.
I loved how you talked about, okay, Tina was a woman of color. I also like that balance in the whole show. There's like a balance of all cultures in this show. And I thought it was so interesting just to see how, there's not one more of one or the other, but there definitely was a balance of all the different cultures. And yeah, but Ibrahim and then the other young man sweeps. I just love he's like a quiet storm in the background. I love how they call him sweeps because I guess he's responsible for the floors.
Yeah.
And I love how Sydney speaks to his how she's like his floors are pretty clean. I mean, he really cleans the floors.
Do you remember that scene in the first season though, where like she goes up to sweeps and it's like a 30-second rant? It's just so funny. She's like, and these floors are so dirty, I almost broke my neck. It was so like it's like you have to watch it. It's like not watch it, like season one, episode like 4 or something. It is
Yeah,
hilarious.
yeah, I know.
One of her
Yeah.
best monologues. I loved it. I loved it.
I love how she talks to them and her little it's kind of a sarcastic sort of
Yes.
conversation that she has with them like no, you're right. That was cute. But he learned after she had that conversation with him, and now she thinks he cleans the floors really well. When you look at it in season two, I thought that was it's just really telling, and it was adorable. Yeah. So no, those are all really good points. We've covered a lot of the questions. I love the way uh yeah, I love the way we went through a lot of my questions that I had and my themes that I had just kind of throughout. And I don't know, are there any last thoughts or do you all have anything that we didn't touch on that you wanted to bring up?
I think just for me, of course, I've already expressed my love for Marcus in season two, but Richie also, like, season one, I had a love hate relationship with him where, and I think that's how they developed it, where you love to hate him. But in season two, we talked about how we saw that growth of him finding his purpose. And I think that was a reoccurring theme. But it was really, like we said, great for Richie because we saw this huge like flip for him. But I remember him saying, and I think he was talking to Carmi, where he says, "Yeah, I wear suits now," and that just like hit really hard for me. And I was like, "Oh, like that just." It just showed like he's learned so many lessons, and like remember he used to like deal. I don't remember what it was, but he used to
Yeah,
deal like
drugs. I
prostitutes.
think drills and drugs in the back. Yeah, for
Yeah,
Michael.
whatever it was. And it was just like whenever I was holding, and to go from that to now a man who wears suits, who has his role, like that just really like it's just another moment where I was like, I have tears in my eyes. Like I'm just happy.
No,
Yeah.
it was beautiful.
Yeah.
So River, I'm gonna let you give some of your last thoughts.
I think the only other thing I would touch on is just how if the show also feels like a really beautiful feels like a really beautiful tribute to Chicago in a lot of ways that I think we don't
Yes.
get, like it's very easy to focus on like the political nature of Chicago and like, kind of just politicized Chicago, but I think the show through just like its cinematography, the way in which we follow characters, it really is like a really beautiful tribute to that, to Chicago, to the people of Chicago. So I love it, and I think it makes it such a like, I don't know, American story in that way. Not American
Mhm.
like just nationality wise, but American in like a story that feels like one we all in this country can relate to, and like one we all like
Mhm.
have. Like we have a favorite restaurant, and we have like restaurants that we want to see grow. We may not know
Mhm.
chefs, but we have places that we like to dress up for and dine out. Like, and that is like something that we
Mhm.
can all connect with, and
Mhm.
it being a big city, I also love because I'm from New York. So I love that it just is like a really awesome tribute, I think, to Chicago and the people of Chicago. Because yeah, there's great visual moments all the time. Like I think when Ibrahim is like skipping one of the culinary like days. Like he's just like
Mhm.
smoking a cigar or something, and then it zooms out and he's smoking, and the backdrop is like the Chicago skyline. I'm like, this is
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yes.
So they do
Yes.
some moments like that where I think they integrate the setting well with like the story and the characters, and it's great.
No, I agree. I think some of my last thoughts that I felt like I didn't cover were we didn't really talk that much about Claire. I think
Mm,
Claire's relationship with Carmi was
yeah,
a healthy relationship for him. I think she was a way for him to open up to do some of those things that he missed out on. I loved how they went to the
the
it looked like a
party.
college party where they were doing the bongs and they were like it was like he never got to have any of those
Yeah,
experiences, and she wanted to share that with him to let him know that one, he really didn't miss that much, and two, he can really, have conversations and be with people and to be charismatic, and
yeah,
I thought that was beautiful. I also wanted to just kind of mention the a call out to the Al-Anon, Al-Anon, I know I'm not saying it right, but it's like it's the Alcoholics Anonymous for
oh yeah,
people
Oh,
who are the victims, the family members.
mhm.
I think that that's a really important group. I should know the name of it because I've gone to a couple of sessions of those myself. But it's really important that people know that that is out there. And I love how they just made sure that you see that side of it, because in most shows
right,
they talk about AA and they don't talk so much about the people who really are suffering because of the person who has the addiction. So I just thought that was beautiful
it
too.
was.
I
Yeah.
think this show is, like you said, River, it is so touching. It's so beautiful. It has so many layers
Mhm.
and so many just touching things that can just anyone can relate to. Um, that I'm just so glad that the writer and the creator that they even came up with it, and I just love the beautiful acting. They
Yeah,
made all the right choices
Yes.
in the acting. The audience doesn't know, but my little girl is named Sydney,
yeah,
and that's why I said, that these two young people on the phone, they know my Sydney. So on the screen here, they know my Sydney. So yeah, I when I watch it, I think of her, and she lived in Chicago with you,
yes.
River. So I think that's something that's kind of touching to me too, since I learned a lot about Chicago and when you all live there. So no, beautiful show, beautiful time to watch it. So if you haven't watched it, please watch The Bear. You're missing out if you don't.
Yeah.
I just want to give a shout out for the Hot Nerd Network. We hope you enjoyed this recap of The Bear. We have lots of other things. Please go and check out the Hot Nerd Network YouTube channel and become a viewer and enjoy some of the other content that is on there. And because we do it because we're enjoying it, because we're hot nerds. So we hope to see you come back again, and we hope to come back together again, you all, for to do season three when they finish with season three. I hope the two of you will come back and join me,
Oh yeah.
and
For
I
sure.
will leave with the quote. We will let it rip. Isn't
Yes.
that's Michael's quote, right?
Perfect. I love that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, this is great. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah.